Hi, I'm about to record commentary for my Shovel Knight speedrun, and I'm hitting play in 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, Shovel Knight is a pretty basic platformer. There's not much to say about it. The fundamentals of movement in this game are 1, ladders are slow, so if we can ever avoid climbing a ladder by jumping on it, or like finding a way to gain height that isn't using the ladder, we're going to do that. The number 2 thing is attacking is slow, but only if you're on the ground. So Shovel Knight runs around, and if you try to shovel something while you're on the ground, you'll stop moving to shovel. So we don't want to do that. And you can see that I've avoided that for those dirt piles. Standing still and shoveling them is not really a good option, so what I do is instead I jump and shovel. Because when you're in midair, shoveling doesn't stop you at all. It doesn't affect your momentum. So that's very useful. The third thing is you can animation cancel by jumping. So every time I use a relic or I attack, especially with the Chaos Orbs, I can jump immediately after, and that way I can keep my momentum and cancel the animation, and that lets me attack at a higher rate than usual. I use that in a couple of places, most notably the Black Knight fight that comes at the end of Plains. So yeah, money is important in Shovel Knight, which is why I want to go through the trouble of digging up those piles by jumping over them. It doesn't lose me any time, but it is annoying. But I have to do it. So there you could see me doing a whole bunch of animation cancels because I'm just spamming jump and attack at the same time. And that lets me attack and then immediately jump, and it lets me keep my momentum while still clearing the dirt out from in front of me. So aside from those fundamentals, there isn't that much I can say about Plains. I try to avoid climbing ladders as much as possible, jumping as high as I can before grabbing them. And I'm digging up dirt piles to gather as much money as I can for the coming levels, because money gets very tight later on in the run. There's a skip here that involves jumping on the dragon's bubbles to wrap the screen around and end up on this screen instead of going through the route that I'm normally doing. And it saves a lot of time over what I've done, but unfortunately I don't know the trick so well, so I can't do it. But, you know, next time. Coming up is the Black Knight fight. So the basic idea behind the Black Knight fight is if I shovel Black Knight while close to the ground, and then jump immediately, I can cancel the animation and maintain my forward momentum, so I can follow Black Knight into this corner. So the ideal way to do it is to just keep on stun locking Black Knight until he's in the corner on the right, and then kill him like that, but I messed it up a little bit, so I had to chase him to the left instead. So after every level, there's one of these campfire sequences, and for the most part they're skippable, but every third one is not. So you just jam start and skip the campfire. You can dig up the pile, the fireplace or the fire pit in each of those campfires to get a little bit of extra gold, but generally you don't want to because it's a waste of time, and we can get gold the rest of the way. You have to visit the village before continuing, and now we're on to Pridemore Keep. So you can see me shoveling that dirt pile there like I was doing in Plains. So the first screen of Pridemore Keep you actually have to be pretty tight on. You see how close I was to getting that cycle. And that was like a pretty perfect run of that first screen. So losing any time there means that you have to wait for that cauldron or you'll take damage from it, and that's slow. I totally screw that up. But getting through that screen, you want to beat the cauldron cycle there too. Oh, I should probably talk about checkpoints. The way checkpoints work in Shovel Knight is if you die, you go to the most recent of those orbs that you run into. But you also have the option of breaking the orbs, and that gives you extra money, but obviously if you die, it's not great news. So I'm not breaking a lot of the orbs, but that's not because I'm afraid of dying, because I know the levels well, so I'm not going to die that often. The reason why I'm not breaking them is just because it takes 3 hits to do it, and that's a pretty significant loss of time. Like, that's a second or two to just, like, stand there and break the checkpoint. So I break 1 during Pridemore Keep because I need the money to, like, have enough for the rest of the game. But for the most part, I'll get my checkpoints and I won't break them because I don't need that much money. And there are some checkpoints that are like out of your way, and for those ones you just don't get them. So you can actually sneak around that chandelier and those lance things, but you need good RNG for it, and I think I might have just messed it up there. You can see how low I am on health. There's a couple of damage boosts in this level that I used, but there aren't any more in the level, so if I make no more mistakes, then I'll just be at this life when I face the boss. And I'm fairly confident in myself, so I don't bother getting another chicken to heal up. So, I'll talk about iframes after the King Knight fight, but the King Knight fight's pretty basic. He runs around. I kill him a little bit slowly in this run, if I recall, but the trick with King Knight, he's a very easy boss to beat casually, but the quick kill, which is not what I'm doing, but the quick kill is pretty bonkers to kill him as fast as possible, so I'm killing him pretty slow. So ideally, I should have been able to kill him before he was doing those dashes, but because of a little bit of misprediction on my part, I failed. So I killed him like a couple seconds slower than I should have. This was a pretty bad Pridemore keep, all things considered. Okay, iframes. So earlier in the level, there were these two griffins, and one of them I took damage from. And the thing is, when you take damage in Shovel Knight, you get knocked back a little bit. You get knocked backwards. So there's a trick where you can damage boost by facing backwards from the direction you want to go when you take the damage, and that'll launch you in the direction you want to be going in. So you can save time over just taking damage normally. And you don't actually go that much slower than just walking. The other thing is you get a couple of seconds of iframes, invincibility frames, when it happens. So there are some cases where you just take damage and then walk through enemies, like I did with that griffin. So that's one way to walk through enemies, and the other way to walk through enemies is by damaging them. When you damage an enemy, they'll flash like blue and red or whatever, and it means that you can't damage them another time with like the same weapon or whatever, but it doesn't really matter, you don't attack that fast anyway. But it also gives you a moment to go through them without actually taking damage from contact, which is pretty useful. There's a little bit of a trick that I do early on in the Lich Yard, which is where I am now, that takes advantage of that. My split's called Battletoads because toads suck. These frog things, when they're sleeping, they're fine because they're not moving, but when they're awake, the direction they jump, the distance they jump, whether or not they're electrified when they jump, all of that's completely random. Okay, you can see here, I damage him so that I can like get inside the enemy, and then I'm able to pogo up like from inside without taking any damage, and that's how like you can take advantage of that. So yeah, sleeping toads are fine. You let sleeping frogs lie, but the ones that are moving super duper suck. Alright, I bought the orbs while I was in the village. These orbs are very, very useful. As you can see, I was able to clear out those skeletons like very quickly. And they're also really useful for beating bosses. They help me beat many, many bosses. So this is one of those places where if you don't short hop, you run into those spikes and just die. So if you tap A for the shortest amount of time, Shovel Knight will short hop. And then if you hold it, you can go medium. And if you hold it the whole way, he'll do his highest jump. So short hops are pretty useful because sometimes you just have to sneak through narrow spaces. The other thing is, jumping is faster than running, because when Shovel Knight changes directions or starts moving from a standstill, oh right, yeah, I screwed that up, that's not supposed to happen, but when Shovel Knight's changing directions or moving from a standstill, it takes him a moment to get up to speed, but if he jumps or he starts moving in midair, he has instantly full speed. Also, I'm used to this enemy falling down after the first time you hit him, and he didn't, probably just like random RNG. So that's two mistakes that I make. One of them was just me not pressing down to pogo. Yeah, this level, I made a couple of mistakes here. But you can see me turning around just before that toad jumps into me so that I don't get knocked backwards, I get knocked forwards instead. This screen is terrifying because you have no clue where you are, but after a little while you get used to it and you can do it with your eyes closed, so you don't need to worry about not being able to see. Unfortunately, it's a little hard for viewers to know what's going on. Okay, the Spectre Knight fight. There's one damage boost early in the Spectre Knight fight that just gives me iframes so I can get some damage in, which means this is a very, like, narrow fight, because I'll take that damage, and then a hit from anything will kill me at this point. So I need to kind of be good, and instead of bad. So Spectre Knight will either go to the bottom left or bottom right on this cycle, and he ended up going bottom left, which is slightly slower, so that's kind of unfortunate. If he goes bottom right, it's a lot easier to wail on the guy. So I knock him into the corner, and he has 4 hits left on him, so I figure I can kill him quick enough. And I can, but it's very close. I almost got hit by the Spectre, and that would have just been, like, a reset. And, like, an early reset, so it's fine, but it would have been a reset. I've been making mistakes in the levels in this run, so I am more willing to take risks elsewhere just to gain back time. And that's, like, my mindset. So this is the third dream sequence we've done, which means that we can't skip it, because we're about to have a dream about what's her name? Shield Knight falling. And there are 2 ways to terminate this dream sequence. One of them is to wait for Shield Knight to, like, there's a timer running, and Shield Knight will fall at the end of the timer. The other way to do it is to die. So the objective of these dream sequences is to die as quickly as possible, but also collect your gold. I kind of screwed this up. I miss a lot of the gold. So I'm about 400 gold behind what I want to be, which is why I decide to dig up this fire pit, even though that's slower, in air quotes. Also, I get meal tickets, mostly because late in the game there's a boss rush, and it's incredibly difficult, and I haven't been able to beat it without extra health. So you can also buy meal tickets, but that's even more time lost. So instead I just take the 3 meal tickets from those long dream sequences, and I use them to get 3 extra circles of health. You'll see it later on what I mean, but there's a guy in the village that you can give meal tickets to, and he'll give you extra health. So coming up is Mole Knight stage. In Mole Knight stage we get the Dust Knuckles, which are an incredibly useful item. They let us punch through enemies and through blocks, which means we no longer need to hurt ourselves to, like, pass through enemies, because we can just punch them. So that on its own is pretty great. And then also, when you're punching, you're going faster than if you were just walking through them. Here we have an auto-scroller in this beetle that's going across the lava, because we can't fall in the lava, it'll kill us. So this beetle's super slow, so we don't want to ride the beetle all the way. So what we do instead is we release this bird and we chase it down, and then off a certain cue, we can bounce off its head and skip that entire gap. So we didn't have to wait for the beetle to make its way across. So I take a damage boost to pass through that guy, and you'll see later how the Dust Knuckles sort of fixes that strat, so I don't need to take damage boosts anymore. These fire slimes are annoying because you can't jump on their heads, and slimes are already bad enough because their movement is just as random as the frogs. You'll see here, I almost get screwed by it. So that slime just lunges across the pit randomly at me. That doesn't happen that often, and I almost die to it, but I don't, so I got lucky. So these slimes are completely random, these green ones here. So while it's theoretically possible to get through them without taking damage, it is more than likely that there's just a wall of green that you can't pass through. So in every level, there's Chester off in some side area. He's the same guy I bought the orbs from, but in the village, and you can go out of your way to find him. I break this checkpoint because it doesn't actually lose any time, because I needed to wait for that platform anyway. But it's a little scary, so I don't do it normally. The reason why I broke the checkpoint there is because I'm behind on gold. As you remember, I'm behind by about 400 on gold. So breaking that checkpoint doesn't lose me any time, but it does make me a little nervous because timing is hard. So you're about to see the strength of the Dust Knuckles, because normally I would have to damage boost to get past this guy, but there's lava in the way, so I can't. But the Dust Knuckles just let me punch straight through him. This checkpoint I always break. It's just really free. So I always break that checkpoint. That's not like something because this run's going bad. Knowing your money is very important for like the first half of this run, but after that first half, there's a big purchase that we do very soon. But after we're done that purchase, we don't really need to worry about money at all anymore. But yeah, money is very tight. I've like lost runs to 10 gold. As in, I was 10 gold off from what I needed to purchase, and I was just kind of screwed. So the key with Mole Knight is you try to make sure that your orbs hit him twice when you launch them, which is just a timing and feel thing. And that way, he has enough damage that you can kill him right here. It's a little tricky because if you don't kill him fast enough, he'll burrow into the ground and he'll be invincible for a while. Like, he goes into an attack that makes him invincible, and that takes forever to get through. So you lose, like, a solid 10 seconds minimum from it. So I didn't feel the need to dig up the fire pit there because 4950 is, like, more than enough gold to have enough. So I need to have 8,000 gold by the time I finish this level, Plague Knight's level. And Plague Knight himself gives me 2,500 gold when I kill him, which means I need 5,500 gold by the time I fight the boss. And I can get 5,500 gold, well, the additional 550 gold from the level pretty trivially. Plague Knight's level is incredibly difficult. There's a lot of global cycles, which means that even if I'm not on the screen, I need to like be in sync with them. How do I explain this? Usually when you enter a room, the enemies and the objects in the room are in a certain position. They're in a certain position, and if you leave the room and come back, they will be back in their starting position. But these barrels are not like that. These barrels are in a certain position when you first start the level, but they're like, even though they're off screen and they're not even like in the level, not even in your vision, they're still going. So if I'm out of sync on one screen, I will continue to be out of sync when I go to another screen, if that makes sense. So it's a global cycle as opposed to a cycle just on that screen. So getting desynced with these barrels is not great. This screen is terrifying because there's lots of bottomless pits, and if you get hit by an enemy, a lot of the time you'll just get knocked into one of those pits and die. So I'm taking it kind of slow here. But I get through without taking damage, so that's good. Coming up is the mini-boss. He transforms into a Sasquatch and then starts running across the room. And if he's not dead by the point he leaves this corner, like he's going to run from this corner to the other corner, I have to kill him before he leaves this corner because if I don't, it takes like 5 extra seconds to catch up to him and finish him off. So I managed to kill him quickly enough. He drops a bunch of gold, but I don't have time for that, so I just leave the screen instead. These fire things are also on global cycles, but luckily, since there's one at the very beginning of the room, I kind of am forced to be in sync with them. I'm not supposed to take damage there, I'm just a numpty. These chomper guys are like kind of annoying. Their flight patterns are kind of random, but it's not terrible. You have a little bit of control over what they're doing, unlike the toads and the slimes, where you just pray. These slime Shovel Knight guys do a lot of damage to you, but luckily we don't really have to deal with them that much. So yeah, you can see that I'm approaching 5,500 gold, and I'm going to get it on this screen, which means I don't really need to worry about collecting gold for the rest of the run, but like for the rest of this level too. Plague Knight's a scary fight, so even though I've only lost like a quarter of my health, I still insist on healing up before I fight him because it's a hard fight. Because Plague Knight jumps around like an asshole and throws bombs, and the bombs are like hard to avoid, and then they spawn these little fireball things that move on the floor and you'll run into them, and it's terrible. It's just a bad time. So that was a very strong Plague Knight fight. Better than I usually do. I got lucky. I had good movement. I just did a good job, I guess. You can see now I have 8,000 gold. 8,100, I guess. But That's good, because this is the biggest purchase in their run, because I need to buy 2 items, and each of them is 4,000 gold. The 2 items I'm about to buy are the Conjurer's Coat, which is this swaggy purple armor, and the Charge Slash. So the Conjurer's Coat gives me 50 extra magic. You can see I have 30 magic, and now I have 80. And so having extra magic is really good because of how much mobility a lot of the magic items give you. Like you saw, the Dust Knuckles make you very fast. So having 80 magic worth of them instead of 30 is like very useful. The downside to it is every attack deals an additional half circle of damage to me, which means basically, essentially all damage has been doubled against me. So I effectively only have 2 life instead of 4, which is, you know, not great. The other thing I got was the Charge Slash, which lets you hold down B. It slows down your movement while you're holding it, but like if you're just falling or you don't really care about moving, it doesn't matter. And when you release it, it does a slash that has a wider radius. And does twice as much damage as a normal Shovel Slash. There I screwed up because I'm used to only having to hit that knight 3 times, but I had to hit him 4 times because my timing was off, something like that. These tentacles got patched. It used to be that green balls would like bounce off of them, but they don't anymore, which kind of screwed up my strat for this room. Or like, I don't even know if the balls bounced off of them. Something about them changed. I don't know. My strat for this area got screwed up. Okay, so there, to clear those tentacles without... The intended way to clear that room is to like go off to the left and attack the tentacles with your shovel or something. But if you launch a ball right as you enter the room, the Chaos Orb will like spawn inside the ceiling and get launched out at a very steep angle, and it'll be going fast enough that it can just kill all of the tentacles as they're coming out of the wall. It had a little bit of a delayed kill on one of them, but the point is, it's a lot faster to do that than to do the room as intended. This is 420 Fish. He's called 420 Fish because he's a stoner, and he moves pretty slowly sometimes. I just straight up miss an input here that should have killed him, so I have to wait for him to cross this room, which is annoying. It's like a second or 2. I need the life here. This isn't just me being safe. I need the life because I'm about to take a damage boost. Because I don't want to climb these ladders. So instead I take a damage boost from the Manta Ray, go across and bounce off his head there. And then I do the swaggiest skip of the game. So cool. That one's pretty self-explanatory. You dig the dirt clod out of the wall and then bounce off of it. So these knights take 5 hits, which means I need to shovel him once and then I can punch him to death. Because you can only Dust Knuckle something 4 times before the game like says, okay, he's had enough, and stops you from doing it. There was a checkpoint there. I just straight skipped it because it was out of my way and I didn't want to... And, like, safety is not worth time loss. This knight is super annoying because sometimes he doesn't back off and then he falls on your head and it's just terrible. I get this safety chicken because I'm a huge scaredy cat. As it turns out, I probably could have fought... I can probably fight Treasure Knight with only 3 health, but I'm a huge scaredy cat. So this is the Treasure Knight fight. You beat Treasure Knight by throwing orbs at him because you have 80 magic, so who cares? And just shoveling and wailing on the poor guy and hoping that he doesn't go to the top of the screen. He has a move that, like, makes him jump to the top of the screen. And the problem is, because he's underwater, if he's at the top of the screen, it takes him approximately 10 hours to fall from the top to the bottom. Not literally 10 hours, it just feels that way. And that's a pretty significant time loss, which is kind of funny, but also super annoying. So, once again, we have an extended dream sequence here. And it's, you know, it's an extended dream sequence, I guess. We don't care about money anymore. We're basically set for money. So it doesn't matter if I collect money from these enemies. So instead, I'm just gonna die. Just die as quickly as possible. And dead. Alright. So, when we die in Shovel Knight, in these dream sequences, we want to die as close to the center of the screen as possible, because that way we'll catch Shield Knight instead of letting her fall off the screen. If she falls out, I mean, we're fine with letting her fall. It's not a story beat. It's not because we're sad. It's just because we catch her slightly higher above the ground than she would go if she fell to the bottom. So it saves like 1 second, maybe. I don't know. Not that much time. Now we get to Propeller Knight stage, and these 3 stages, the 3 that are coming up, are probably my favorites in the game. They're just such a good time, and in Propeller Knight stage, you get the most broken item in the game. It's a good time. Except for these ladders. These ladders suck. For the longest time, this enemy at the top, I would like wait really patiently for him to shoot out another ball, and then eventually I realized you can just jump over it, and that saved me a lot of time when I found out. Propeller Knight stage has a lot of bottomless pits, so this is a place where runs go to die, for a couple of reasons. We punch through there because otherwise we don't have enough speed to sneak under that guy. He has a half chance of like, instead of lunging forward, falling down, and if he does, he'll end up right on top of our head. But because we're fast, it's fine. That Jawa sucks. All green, those little green guys that fly around, they move pretty randomly, and instead of like shooting projectiles at you like a reasonable enemy, they blow their fan at you, and it can like knock you off course and just kill you. So Jawas suck. This is a mini boss, you just have to wail on him. We skip this checkpoint because it's out of our way. So we go to the top of the screen, then we drop down so that when we enter the room, the fans aren't on, so we can sneak through there. I mean, that's not even a speedrunning trick, that's just an Easter egg. Like, that's how you get this room. And here, we get the Propeller Dagger. The Propeller Dagger is very useful. It only uses 4 magic every time you use it, and it essentially gives you a little bit of a dash that you can use in midair, like that. So, you can see why speedrunners like the Propeller Dagger. We have to switch in midair. By default, there's no key to switch items, like, without going into a menu, but you can bind them so that you can rotate them. So this room has 3 Jawas, and it's notorious, because sometimes the Jawas just decide, hey, you don't get to have a personal best today, you don't get to have world record today, and they just kind of ruin your life. If you're lucky, you can sneak past them without actually, like, being affected by them, but I was not today. That room sucks. All Jawas suck. This auto-scroller room, I'm sad to admit, has ended a few more runs than is probably proper. It's just, sometimes I mess up and get hit by cannonballs. Again, I'm not overly concerned with gold by this point in the run. I've made my biggest purchase, and I need only 1 more item in the game, and I'm going to get enough gold for that item just by beating the boss at this level. So, I don't need to collect any gold in this stage. This room, so it cycles up and then down and then back. So by default, it takes 8 cycles to get through this room if you do it like the little sissy way. But my route does it in 4, and the fastest route, like the world record route, does it in like 2. And this room is a similar story. Both of them are just like, if you're willing to take a little bit of risk, you can get through the room a lot faster. So I could get the safety chicken here. Propeller Knight's notorious for how much damage he can deal, but I'm fairly confident in my ability to like just stay on track when I kill him, because he's not a very random boss. He does the exact same thing every time. There's a faster kill that like would have him dead by now, but it's pretty precise and pretty difficult, so I can't do it, unfortunately. I do the slow kill. It's something that I should go for, though. So after Propeller Knight is Tinker Knight stage, and Tinker Knight stage is probably my favorite stage in the game. It's really fun, it's really fast, it just feels good to do. So now we have the Propeller Dagger for the rest of the game, and you'll see very quickly why it's so good. If you couldn't in Flying Machine. I don't think that Flying Machine demonstrates the true power of the Propeller Dagger quite as much as this stage does. I'm about to mess up. You have to shovel this guy before you do anything, because otherwise he'll just run into you. But I wasn't holding down up, so I actually attacked instead of using my Propeller Dagger there, which led to me just straight falling off the screen, and that kind of sucks. On this screen, I'm a little bit too cautious about these daggers. I've learned to be more cavalier about it since this run, but yeah. I was a little too scared of the daggers, and I didn't want to just randomly get hit by one. So I leave a pot there for the way back, and I get the gear. So the gear is an item that I don't really like, but you kind of need it. The problem I have with it is that it's not a good item. It doesn't give you mobility. It doesn't give you much. Like, there's one place where you use it in a cool way, but for the rest of the run, like, the reason the gear is good is because it enables you to skip a whole bunch of things. You'll see in a moment what I mean. So, this screen is enough justification to get the gear. Because this, you saw how slow that platform is moving. So instead of dealing with that, I can just have my own platform. And you can see how long this auto-scroller is. So being able to skip it is huge. And I don't like that the gear's primary use is just skipping auto-scrollers like that. It's used to skip another thing later, but I don't know. I don't like the gear. I'm sad that I have to use it. This guy's always the same. You just gotta punch him once and then bounce on his head a bunch. This auto-scroller that goes up is actually pretty scary. Mostly because of these daggers at the beginning. Once you're past those daggers, you're unlikely to, like, die unless you just mess up. So on these auto-scrollers, you actually can just leave the screen. Like, that's always an option. There are some items that aren't loaded in, but most of the platforms of the stage are. The problem is the exit is only available once the auto-scroller reaches the top, so you're just going to be stuck there anyway. For some reason, I decide that I really need this extra health, and I take it. In retrospect, I should not have. It was a waste of time. Anyway, this is Tinker Knight. He's a pretty hard boss fight, and he's dead. It's not that simple. That's actually a shout out to Mega Man. There is a boss, Gear Man, who you would get the mobile gear in his stage, and if you used it on the boss, you just killed him in one hit. Luckily for us, Tinker Knight has a second boss fight, which is a lot more interesting. It's funny, Little Tinker is actually, like, surprisingly difficult, casually. Like, he's not a pushover, even though he looks like it. So the reason I'm throwing the gear at his face is if the gear rolls into his face while he's in the Tinker Tank, it actually does 2 damage instead of just 1. So it's actually pretty useful. Alright, and since this stage is done, I don't need to worry about buying anything ever again for the rest of the run. So money matters literally not at all. So this is Polar Night stage. Context, on my last PB, Polar Night stage, I died like twice and lost a lot of time. My PB time is not very good. You can see the difference between my PB time and my best time for this split is huge. So I figure that I can make up time if I play smart. Unfortunately for me playing smart translated to me playing really cautious and scared. And I actually end up losing a lot of time on this stage, spoiler alert. I also took a bunch of damage here. I was so nervous that I just forgot to set up for that screen, so I need to go back. Here you need to like launch a gear and short hop on top of it basically immediately so that you can get enough height to jump up to that ladder and get off screen before the snowball hits you. And if I got hit by the snowball there, I would just be dead. So, you know, not great. Yeah, there are a lot of problems with this stage. I'm not really proud of how I did here. Like that. That's not great. So this is a place where you're supposed to take that rainbow fountain bridge thing, like, across there, but you saw how slow it was. It's not a great tool. So instead, you just propeller dagger through. So this room is my first big mistake because I decided I need this chicken, which is probably correct. Like, I need the chicken. And then I proceed to mess this up once, twice, 3 times, 4 times before I decide to give up on it and just do that. And now you can see how low my magic is because I've been wasting it. So now I have incredibly low magic. I still need to use my dagger a lot of the time. So at this point, maybe I should have been conserving my magic instead of like using the normal route because I'm way behind. But I was a silly goose and I just kept using my magic. Even though I only have enough for 1 more sword use. And then I mess up this rainbow bridge again. It's just, oh god, this level's a mess. What am I doing? So now I'm just straight up out of magic. So I end up just taking the damage there and killing these guys by hand instead of doing how I'm supposed to do it. Luckily, there's these pots here, which gives you like a refresh on magic. So I'll be able to go into the boss with about 30 magic, which is still like less than what I'm used to, but it's still a doable boss fight. So we use the gear here. This is another place that the gear just skips a whole bunch. So you can see, what I've used the gear for so far is skip an autoscroller, skip a large section of the level, and kill a boss. So the gear, like, isn't very versatile. It does, like, a couple of very specific things that save a lot of time. So here, I'm nervous about this boss because I'm super low on resources. So that leads to the choke that you're about to see, where he comes here. So the problem is, Polar Knight goes to the side of the stage that has more space when he falls down like that. And I thought it was the right, but he disagreed. It was the left, which meant that I couldn't get as much damage as I wanted to, and then I took damage, and I didn't have magic items, so I couldn't damage him back, and I just die. So that's the death of this run. I only had 1 death in this run. It really hurt. It was not great, but, you know. So at this point, I'm losing time. You can see by my timer that I'm actually, like, I'm still ahead, but I'm taking a time loss while fighting this boss, which is unfortunate. Luckily, this time I set him up so it's a lot less ambiguous which side he's going to go to, and I'm able to score a kill on him reasonably fast. Lost about 20 seconds. It's unfortunate. So, again, now that we've beaten another set of 3 levels, I take another dream sequence. And this is the last dream sequence of the game, and it's very easy to die very quickly on it, so no problems. You just gotta stand under a guy who's throwing harpoons. And after this, I'm not going to continue to the last levels immediately, because I need to go back to the village and cash in my meal tickets so I can go up to 7 life. I'm not sure if I caught Shield Knight here. I don't think I did. Yeah, I couldn't. So you can see how she fell through the floor a little bit, but if I was in a position to catch her, then she would fall on top of me and, like, she wouldn't have to fall as far. It's such a tiny thing, though. Okay, luckily for me, the devs put in this catapult here, so I'm able to just, like, shortcut my way back to the village immediately instead of having to go through the entire map. There are a bunch of enemies that run around on the world map, and they're like boss fights. And you kind of have to avoid them, because if you bump into them, you have to fight them, and that's super inconvenient. Especially as a speedrunner. So it used to be that they would run around, and then if they were randomly in your way, you would have to like enter and exit a level to reshuffle them. But the devs were nice enough to actually fix that. So if you're going fast enough, that is, the amount of time you spent in-game is less than like 6 minutes or 20 minutes at certain points during the game, they'll actually make a point of just staying out of your way. So it's actually really nice. You don't have to worry about ever running into those guys, ever. Basically, the game detects that if you're a speedrunner and then gives you mercy. So these these two levels, Tower Entrance and Tower Ascent, reuse mechanics from earlier levels because, you know, theming, I guess. So you're going to see a lot of reprises of stuff we've already done, like in terms of enemies. So here I take a damage boost because there's a lot of projectiles going on here and there's no real way to avoid it. And then you can just punch through the enemy. So this is a crusher. It's not quite an auto-scroller, but you are kind of a slave to the whims of the cycles. Obviously, you don't want to get crushed, and we're able to skip a couple of cycles over like how it's supposed to go by just using Propeller Dagger to get through faster than intended. So you're able to skip a bunch of stuff in the crusher level. As always, this barrel is on a global cycle, not on a room cycle. Here I mess up. What's supposed to happen is I'm supposed to bounce off that guy and then, like, bounce off the samurai up there. But instead I just mess up and don't do it instead. You know. It's a lot cooler when I do it right. So this is another shadow area like Inspector Knight, and it's kind of annoying, but the nice thing is that you're never actually like hidden from your own view. Like you'll always know where Shovel Knight is, unless you go off screen, but you know. Also, you can tell which platforms are fake and which ones are real by whether the rain's bouncing off of them. But because I know the game so well, I don't really have to think about that. I know which platforms are real just by memory. And now we fight Black Knight again. So technically you're supposed to fight Black Knight 3 times during this game, but I beat the game so fast that we just didn't fight Black Knight the second time. So this is the Black Knight fight 3, technically. You can actually kill Black Knight the exact same way I did in the first level, except the threshold for the stun lock is a lot smaller. So it's like very precise. So I don't do it. Instead I just fight him like a man. By propeller daggering into him repeatedly. And then bouncing on his head. And then jumping and charge slashing and the fight's over. Like that. It used to be I had a lot of trouble with this fight, and then I discovered the trick where you just propeller dagger into his face, and then it knocks him around. And then we get to move on to the most exciting part of the run. The split's called My Dinner with Andre, and the picture is of chicken, because there is not one boss in this level, there are 8. You do a boss rush. You fight every boss you've already faced, except for Black Knight. And the problem is, it's an incredibly long boss fight with no checkpoints in the middle, which means if you die, you lose up to 5 minutes of time, and it's actually ridiculous. The rest of the level is like nothing too special. This area coming up, this room, is like pretty annoying. You can just like randomly die in it, which is not great. But I get through without too many issues. It's just scary. I almost get this room perfectly, but I mess up at the last moment, which is unfortunate. So your charge slash has an extended forward range, but it also hits behind you a little bit. So I'm able to stand on the front of that fountain and just charge slash over and over again. Jawas are annoying and terrifying. Oh, right. Also, no one likes the rainbow fountain. The way you're supposed to do that part of the level is, like, send the rainbow fountain through that gauntlet there. But instead of doing that, a speedrunner can just go to the top of the screen and be off screen and jump up there. Because the devs didn't put in a ceiling for some reason. So, that's good. Doing it with a rainbow bridge is, like, super annoying, and no one wants that. As per tradition, I almost get this music sheet and then don't. This is an auto-scroller, so it doesn't matter how efficient I am doing it, because, again, the exit's not going to open until I get there. Yeah, I can do this auto-scroller with my eyes closed, probably. My cat's in my room. Yeah, I don't really have that much to say about this. You just have to know, like, where the rats are and how to set up your platforms, and know where the enemies are going to drop down so you don't just get, like, hit on the head. Like this guy. I'm super nervous about this guy for some reason, but I get him. And, yeah, if you do it right, you can get that turkey and then just head across the room and you'll be fine. These bins randomly will contain either food or magic items or a bomb, but I don't need them because I just got the turkey from the autoscroller. And here's the Order of No Quarter, having dinner. So yeah, the order of the bosses that you fight is completely random with one exception, and that is Polar Knight has to be one of the first 3 guys that you face. The reason for that is because Polar Knight makes spikes, and no one wants to just die to spikes. So if you're going to die to spikes, you're going to do it early. This Spectre Knight fight I do pretty mediocre. It's not great. The Spectre Knight fight, the major change is that you have Charge Slash and you don't want to waste your magic, because you get extra health every fight, but you don't get that much extra magic every fight. So you don't want to waste your magic on any particular enemy. So the way you beat Spectre Knight is you just do it kind of the normal way, but with less orbs and more Charge Slashes. The way you beat Mole Knight is instead of launching your orbs, you do Charge Slashes while he's going across. You could see that I missed 2 of them because I suck at this game. So that was unfortunate. But yeah, you get to see what happens when you screw up on Mole Knight now. When he has this fire, you can't damage him. So instead you have to launch those things back at him. And then you have to kill him at this point in the cycle. And you can see it's just annoying. And now he's underground and I can't kill him. So I have to get him here and then I mess up and then I kill him. He's dead. But it was slow, is my point. That was a bad Mole Knight fight. I missed a bunch of Charge Slashes early on and it was not great. So now Polar Knight fight. I need to get this chicken before I fight him because I'm scared. You know. He goes up. I make sure it's pretty unambiguous which side of the stage he's going to run to, and then I just finish him off. The nice thing about big guys like Polar Knight or Treasure Knight is that when you launch an orb, each orb will hit him more than once, so it's actually like an absurd amount of damage. The only real difference in the King Knight fight, I try to avoid using magic in the King Knight fight because I don't need it. I just use my Charge Slash whenever I can instead. You know, opportunities. That was a little bit of a slow kill. It was about as slow as my original, like, the first King Knight kill in this game. So, you know, it wasn't great. The Plague Knight fight, the main difference is that you don't have the destructible blocks, so he can't screw you over that way. You also have Charge Slash, but it's not really that useful. I'm kind of overusing it here. I probably shouldn't be using it as much as I am. The other thing is, you have more orbs than before, but again, you don't want to waste your magic too much, so, like, having more magic isn't actually that great. Okay, I want you to look at that green orb going. It's on the left wall. It's coming back towards me. It's coming back towards me. Bam! It just hits me. It sucks. I hate it. That was the most annoying thing. It psyched me out really hard. I had the wrong item out. I almost died a little tinker. Like, that was the worst thing that has happened to me ever. It was just a bad time. It was just not a good time. I'm not happy about that. Luckily, I didn't die to it. If I died to it, I would be much less happy about it. It was horrifying. I hate Plague Knight so much. So, the Tinker Knight fight is basically identical to the first time I fought him. Like, I do basically the exact same thing. The only exception is against Little Tinker. Because you're usually in the middle of the stage and Tinker's like closer to you, you actually have to dodge his wrench before you can hit him with the gear. While in the first one, I could just throw the gear and not even worry about what he was doing. Treasure Knight fight's more or less the same as well. Because, well, that's the thing. Treasure Knight was in the second half of the game, so I had all of the items that I have now to beat him. You see me resetting to the center of the stage after every boss fight. The reason I do that is, one, it standardizes what I'm doing, and two, it's often useful to like have a faster pattern for the bosses by being in the middle. The Plague Knight, the Propeller Knight strat actually changes a little bit because I start in the middle instead of on the left like I did in the original fight, where I can shovel him as he lunges at me, and then shovel him again when he lunges past me, so I'm just in the middle and he's kind of hitting me back and forth. And it lets me use the charge slash a lot more than I did originally. So it's a different kill, but it's about as fast. And yeah, that's the boss fight. So I beat my PB by about 30 seconds, not because I did particularly well on the bosses, but because I did better on the actual level preceding. And now we go to the final level, the Tower Fate, the top of the tower, where we fight the Enchantress. Oh, right, the story of this game. A while ago, Shield Knight died, and then Shovel Knight got really sad about it and retired, but now the Enchantress is back, so I have to kill the Enchantress. That's the story. This pattern of blocks is pretty difficult for, like, newcomers, but once you know the pattern, it's very trivial to just do. So this screen, I know the arrangement of the blocks, but I'm like pretty nervous and I don't want to die to something stupid, so I take it slow anyway. But, you know, in real life, I probably should be going faster than that. This is the last time we use the gear, and once again, it's just used because there's a big, boring, flat line that we need to go on, and the gear is faster than running. And it's just like, okay, whatever, thanks. This is the Enchantress fight. Early on, my fight gets a little bit knocked off course. What I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to hit her with an orb and then launch her 3 projectiles back at her here, but instead I just mess it up. And so she's supposed to be diving by now, but I did it wrong. But I make her dive now. So she's doing dives. I can get a little bit of damage on her here if I'm lucky, but instead I almost die, but I get lucky and don't. And now she's at the bottom of the screen, and there's not much I can do about this. Like, if I jump down there to try and damage her, she'll just get out of my way before I can kill her, and then I'll fall off the edge and die. So I kind of just have to bide my time and wait for her to come back up so I can start hitting her again. Like that. You try and charge slash her whenever she dives to get enough damage, and then I just need one more charge slash to kill, and there it is. It looks like I'm low on resources, but after this boss fight, you get back all your life and stuff for the final boss. Also, spoiler alert, Shield Knight was the Enchantress all along, and we get to catch her, just like our dreams. We try to catch her at the apex of our jump, because that's the fastest way to do it. So this is the Remnant of Fate, or something. It is a much easier boss than the small Enchantress for some reason. So we need to bounce on Shield Knight and hit it in the head. And then when it goes across, we need to just propeller dagger its face forever. And that moves it into this cycle, which is a very easy place to get a kill from, because you just do it again. And then we kill. And yeah, that's that's that. That's Shovel Knight. That's how you beat Shovel Knight fast. And I'm really happy about it because I got sub 55, so that's why I'm celebrating. Anyway, thanks for listening to this commentary. I hope you found it informative. And if you have any questions, you can message me on Facebook or email me or you know, find me on Twitch, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. All right. Thanks for watching. See you around.